So this is one of those things you need to go ahead and get and just have around so you're ready when those freezing temps arrive. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having a spectacular day. It is Friday, November 3rd here in South Georgia, and we're on the tail end of our first cool spell of the fall. Only got down to about 37 degrees here. Didn't get really cold, not cold enough to damage anything, but I thought it would be a great time to talk about frost protection and frost protection measures you can take to protect your backyard garden. So we're going to talk about what plants we worry about when we're getting a freeze, and then things you can do to protect those plants. Now, we have done videos on the topic of frost protection in the past, but I feel like when we do those videos, because they're shot a week in advance of airing sometimes, then the cold spells have already passed, and a lot of people are like, well, wish I would have known that sooner. So hopefully doing this video now will give people plenty of time to prepare for when those really cold spells do arrive. And I think the most important thing to emphasize here is to be prepared. The last thing you want to do is be scrambling to get something in place to protect your plants the day before some freezing temps are going to arrive. So you want to be prepared, you want to have a plan in place, and hopefully this video will give you an idea of some of the things you're going to need so that you can execute that plan when the time comes. Now, before we talk about how we protect our plants, what supplies we use to protect our plants, let's talk about what plants we worry about when we're getting some freezing temps. And just to give you a little perspective, down here in South Georgia, we rarely get in the low 20s, maybe once a year, sometimes twice a year, but it doesn't happen that often. Most of the time when we get a freeze, we're, above 25. So some of the main things I worry about when we're getting freezing temps would include my lettuce here. Yes, a lot of times a light frost doesn't bother this stuff, but depending on the amount of moisture in the air, it can burn back those leaves pretty good, and we would go from beautiful lettuce to burnt looking lettuce. I also worry about my mustard greens when we're getting a frost. Now, we cut these on the last video, so they're not luscious and green anymore. They'll grow back soon. This is something we usually like to cover. I also will worry about my broccoli and cauliflower, especially if we've got heads formed already. Right now, before head formation, I don't worry about it a whole lot. When we start getting heads on there and start getting some cold weather, I either need to protect it or go ahead and harvest what I've got. And then obviously, if we've got any warm season veggies that haven't matured yet, maybe some fall cowpeas or some fall climbing butter beans, we're going to be worried about those and trying to protect those so we can at least get a harvest or two from them. And then for the stuff I don't worry about, that would include alliums. Never seen onions get killed down here from cold weather. Even last year when we had 17 degrees, burned them back but didn't kill them. I also don't worry about carrots or collard greens and kale. Now, I have seen it get cold enough down here to kill cabbage. The Arctic blast we had last year killed quite a few cabbage plants, but I usually don't worry about them. And I've never seen it get cold enough down here to even phase Brussels sprouts, so we definitely don't worry about those. So as you can see there, we've got some stuff we worry about a lot, some stuff we worry about a little bit, and some stuff we don't worry about at all. And it's good to have kind of a priority list, because oftentimes you can't protect everything. So you need to protect the things you're most worrying about, and sometimes just cross your fingers on the other stuff. All right, so now let's talk about some things you can do to protect your plants, and then I'll show you kind of what supplies we use. So number one, and this one's very important, you want to keep your soil nice and moist. So if I know we're getting some freezing temperatures, I'm running my water all day that day before we get those freezing temperatures that night. Moist soil helps insulate the plants. If you got really dry soil, you're more likely to get some frost damage. And then the second thing you can do that's water related, and this is something I don't like to do, but that I will do as a last ditch measure, is just run a sprinkler all night long. I usually only do this if I've got a warm season veggie I'm waiting on some late production from, like some peas or butter beans that I mentioned earlier. I may run a sprinkler all night on those, and as long as you run that sprinkler until it's no longer freezing outside again, that will protect those plants. I've never ran a sprinkler all night on something like cabbage or a cool season veggie, but I have done it for the warm season veggies. It's not the most efficient use of water, but it does work. Another thing you can do is add mulch around the base of the plants to insulate the plants. Now y'all know I'm not a big mulch guy, and it doesn't really get consistently cold enough down here to justify using mulch in that way, but it is a very helpful tool. A lot of people use it on things like carrots and other root veggies to keep them from freezing. And then lastly, we've got our handy dandy frost protection fabric, which is what I have in this basket here. Now back to what I was saying at the beginning of the video about having a plan and being prepared. This frost protection fabric is one of those things you just kind of need to have if you're going to grow a garden throughout the winter. Unless you live in South Florida, it's not a matter of if you're going to get freezing temperatures, just a matter of when. Now, I resisted using frost protection fabric for many years, and over the last couple years I have really seen the importance of having this stuff in advance of when you're going to get some freezing temperatures. A lot of times you can't find this stuff locally, so you got to order it online, which takes a few days to get to your house. So this is one of those things you need to go ahead and get and just have around so you're ready when those freezing temps arrive. Now, there are several different brands of frost protection out there on the market. I'm sure they all work just fine. I've had good luck using the IRRIGATIon brand of frost protection fabric, and there are different thicknesses of this stuff depending on how much protection you need. So with the IRRIGATIon brand, they've got the AG19, which gives you about 4 degrees of protection. Then you can go thicker than that to the AG30, I think, which gives you about 6 degrees of protection. They've got AG50, which supposedly gives you around 8 degrees of protection, and they've even got one thicker than that they call the AG70. Now, I've only used the AG19 and the AG30. That's usually good enough down here, but if you live somewhere where it gets colder, you might want to go with that AG50 or even the AG70. Just know the thicker the fabric, the more expensive it usually is. And if you take care of this stuff, it should last you several seasons. Now, I have a little system I use for my raised bed plot over there because all those beds are not the same size. So I've cut little pieces of this IRRIGATIon to fit certain bed sizes or shapes. And so when I'm done with a piece, I put it back in these Ziploc bags here. You can see this one says AG19 rectangular raised bed, and then this one here says AG30 round raised bed. So I just store them back in these bags here, keep them underneath the barn. They're ready to go. If I've got something in a round bed I need to protect, just go grab that bag, or if I got something in a rectangular bed I need to protect, go grab this bag. And then I've also got some longer 30-foot long pieces that I keep under the barn. I use those for my in-ground garden plots. Out here in the Dream Garden, all these plots have 30-foot rows, so I can plug and play that stuff. I can use it on any of these plots. So you've got your frost protection fabric, but how are you going to put it over your plants? You can't just lay this stuff on top of plants because oftentimes they'll still get damaged. You really need it to be floating over the top of the plants, not touching the leaves if possible. So one thing you can do is take some small pieces of rebar like this, stick them in the ground, hammer them in the ground on both sides of the row, then get you some PEX tubing or PVC tubing, push it down over the top of that piece of rebar, and that makes you a nice little hoop so you can drape your frost protection covering over the row. And that system works great. I keep some extra rebar and pipe underneath my barn in case I want to implement that type of system. But lately, I've been liking these little bendable hoops here that I got off Amazon, just because I can change the shape really easily depending on how wide I need it to be. And so these work really well for our raised beds here. So on something like lettuce, it's not very tall, I can stretch this one out to go the width of the bed, put my covering over that, and my lettuce will be in good shape. I also have this style right here, which allows me to go a little taller with it. These come with these little connectors, and you can basically make any style of hoop you want with these. I could even go with something wider if I wanted to, but this works really good for these taller rectangular beds. If I've got something in here, maybe some rutabagas or something like that, that's on up here a little taller. And that system works really well for us down here, where it can be 40 degrees one day, 80 degrees the next day. Once it warms back up, I have to take that covering off, otherwise what's underneath it might cook. So having that system in place makes it easy to install it and remove it. A lot of times I'll leave the hoops in place, but having my little bag system, I can take it off and then put it right back on when we're getting another round of cool temps. So if you don't already have some frost protection supplies, I would highly recommend investing in some, especially if you live in zone 8 or farther north. I'll be sure to put some links in the description below to some of the things I showed you earlier. There's lots of different options out there on the market. It's just about finding what works well with your garden layout. And if you've developed some other clever ways to protect your plants from freezing temps, please do share those in the comments below so everybody can read them and maybe get some ideas on what they might can do in their garden. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. Don't forget to check out our website, lazydogfarm.com, where we have the Coop Grow and AgriThrive fertilizers that we use a lot around here. And if you want to see us actually install some of that frost protection fabric, check out this video right here. We'll show you setting up some of that before the epic Arctic blast we had last year. So check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.